my own background, part-time farmer. I was an agricultural advisor part-time as well until about 4 or 5 years ago. I deregistered a lot of other business interests, and I went down this particular route to do a lot of work with government departments, agencies, and it was large-scale capital funding. And everything we do involves identification of need and justification. And whether it's a group of farmers or whether it's a large capital investment of 40 million, the same basic rules apply. You have to go through a process, and you tailor it to the measure of the task at hand. So in relation to this, I listened. I've been on since the beginning of the call. I listened. You have a very short time frame in order to do this, and I think we need to keep this as simple as possible and as practical as possible, and at the same time cover the various requirements that are needed as part of the knowledge transfer program. So a few slides here. I'm going to flick through it very quickly because look, some of the area has been covered already, and then I'm going to give you some practical examples of I suppose surveys and means that we have used basically to collect data. So very quickly going to go through kind of a little bit of context very quickly, practical considerations from my experience of dealing with farmers and being one as well, and trying to get information out of them and trying to prioritize needs, because they're somewhat a different group of individuals I found over the years. A very good friend of mine, no longer with us, did a lot of surveying with farmers, Dr. Pat Bogue, and Pat and myself would have had conversations about doing needs assessment and getting information from our farmer community over the years. And it does require unique skill on some occasions. I'm going to look at a few engagement methods and tools. Some of them already been mentioned. There's a few others I will add as well. And in terms of presentation results and a few practical examples. So again, you have 9 overarching objectives that came from the national consultation and needs assessment that took place prior to Ireland's programme being presented and being approved. So you have, we talk about beginning with the end in mind. When you go to the country, go to your farmers, go to your groups and ask them questions as to what they want to prioritise. You already have a pre-determined list, or you have, I suppose, parameters within what you can do. So it's not just a broad needs assessment. So that provides us with, I suppose, a starting point, and those are the 9. You're all familiar with them. You must ultimately, when you do your needs assessment, the output of this is you need a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 4 that you have prioritized, and you're going to provide evidence and proof as part of your application as to how you came about prioritizing that 1 or up to 4 priorities that you're going to cover in terms of topics. Okay, so you need to be able to define that process. It doesn't have to be overly complicated, but at the same time, it has to have some sort of method to it. As you can see this time around, as opposed to previous knowledge transfer program iterations, there's a much broader scope. There's new areas. There's a heavy emphasis on climate, environment, health, well-being, sustainability. Some of these are words that are very common now over the last 18 months, 2 years, and I think they're going to be increasingly common. And I think there would be, a welcome addition to a knowledge transfer group to focus on some of the newer areas that haven't been covered in the past, as well as that's already been previously referenced that, traditionally a lot of these were on a sectoral basis, such as beef or sheep or whatever the case may be. A lot of these transverse and cross-cut, and again, in terms of needs assessment, that's something you need to take into consideration. I'm not going to cover these. Ultimately, the end game here is when you identify the needs and you present whatever the priority topics are as part of your knowledge transfer group's work plan, you're trying to instigate and embed cultural change and education and learning, which wasn't there in the past. So there's no point in doing the same stuff as you've been doing for years and recovering the same topics with the same people. It is important to try and push the boat out a little bit and embrace some of the challenges. And we've a rapidly changing rural landscape and agricultural landscape in Ireland on many fronts. And the knowledge transfer programme is ideally positioned to provide support in that transition, which has taken place for us all. So you have a very tight time frame. You want to ensure that when you're doing your consultation, as already been mentioned, you want to ensure that Some people are not going to probably engage with you. It's going to be a coalition of the willing and try and get as many as possible, and a reasonable percentage of those that you're going to engage with that will respond. You want a broad, I suppose, cohort in terms of different farm sizes, different ages of participants, gender balance as well. There's going to be a diverse range of needs, and the key thing for you really is prioritising those and deciding on a group by group basis or over all of your groups what you're going to prioritise, and are you going to select one or up to 4 topics? Okay. As well as that, you have to remember you have a different capacity in terms of different age groups and different capacity in terms of the participants that you will be working with. So you have to take that into consideration basically as well. And again, just to reiterate, there's no point doing the same things that you've been doing over the last number of years with the group. Try and look at things that haven't already been covered, and that should be a consideration. I suppose in terms of asking farmers and engaging with them, whether you're going to survey them, whether you're going to meet them in a group, or whatever the case may be, you want to speak in a language that they understand. And if you were to list off the 9 objectives or topics, and no disrespect to whoever put them together, there probably is a little bit of work on your part to, in practical terms, explain what exactly those mean. So, for example, if you pick topic or objective number 1, what specifically will that mean in a knowledge transfer group? What sort of stuff will you actually cover, and what skills, what knowledge base, etc., will be covered? This is demystifying, I suppose, what the priorities are at national level, and I suppose also it's encouraging more people to get engaged as well. So, as already been mentioned, first instance, use existing data. You've very tight timeline, heard a number of weeks, so you have limited space to do this, but ultimately consultation is a thing, and that's what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to try and give you, from my experience, how you do that quickly, or how I suggest you do it quickly. So you're going to talk to farmers and those prospective participants. A lot of you have existing groups in existence, and some of you have new groups as well. And maybe, where possible, try and encourage them to have other farm family members involved in the discussion. And possibly there's other stakeholders, but given the timeline, you're going to have limited time, in my opinion, to start going out and talking to a broad range of other people. But I think above all else, it's important that whoever you do source the needs from, that is representative, and it's not 5% of your farmers, that it's a reasonable number. Okay. So some of these were mentioned already in terms of consultation and surveying, etc. Look, I was contacted. We do contract work for government departments, councils, etc. I was contacted back last year to do a public consultation and a needs assessment for a capital project of 1.9 million. So it was much larger than this, and they needed it done yesterday. So I had actually 10 days to complete this. So what I did was, we devised the survey. It had to be open, transparent, public. We did a survey. We used SurveyMonkey. I know the link was provided in an earlier presentation. We also did paper-based version of the survey. We circulated on WhatsApp, social media. We did posters with QR codes on it. We plastered it everywhere. In 4 days, we had 386 responses in a particular town or village without us leaving the office at all. Similarly with farmers, you probably in many cases have limited time to start bringing groups together to sit down and actually or meet a group of farmers to do focus group discussions and facilitate discussion to come up with priorities. Maybe that will be part and parcel of what you do, but if you want to broaden the net out, my strong advice to you is use some of the online tools. If you're not familiar with SurveyMonkey, there's a heap of other ones there as well, I'll mention now in a second. Ultimately as well, if you have older farmers that can't use a smartphone or aren't going to click on a link on a computer or a smartphone or a tablet, that's perfectly fine. SurveyMonkey or the other surveying platforms will allow you to ring them, or someone in your office to ring them, spend 2 minutes on the phone, ask them a number of questions, fill out the survey on your computer, and it's included in the survey. One of the key benefits, I suppose, of it is that there's auto-analysis. So in other words, it will analyze the information for you. Some of these tools are free of charge, and then to get additional, I suppose, functionality, you have to pay a monthly subscription. Most of them You can pay monthly. You don't have to pay hundreds of euro for an annual subscription. And I'm sure there's somebody in most of your offices or somebody you know is familiar with using these. Here are a few other ones: Google Surveys, MailChimp, Survey Planet. We've used them all, but they're very, very useful. A lot of farmers use smartphones. Those who don't, and older farmers in particular who don't, that doesn't mean they're kept outside the process. You can give them a paper survey, or you can get someone in your office to ring them and fill the survey out with them. Keep it very, very short and very, very simple. So in terms of circulation and getting it out to farmers, from my experience dealing with farmers and residents and people in local communities, WhatsApp. Some of you already have WhatsApp groups. I know a number of advisors have those. If you don't have WhatsApp groups, maybe consider setting one up. Text, email. The other one obviously is QR code on a poster or a flyer. So I'm sure you're all familiar with this. SurveyMonkey and all these different platforms provides you the opportunity to create a QR code, which is a little type of, it's not a barcode, it's with heaps of little pixels and dots on it. And when you put your smartphone or device in front of it, the survey comes up in front of you, and the survey can be filled out in 60 seconds to 2 minutes. Key thing in terms of surveying and collecting information, identifying needs from farmers, is keep it short, to the point, less than 4 minutes and practically less than 2 minutes to complete it. Once you go over that, you're not going to get answers. And in your case, the questions are fairly defined. You're not going to be asking them what they had for their breakfast. It's going to be fairly specific and fairly targeted in terms of knowledge transfer and priorities. Okay. So I suppose in terms of surveying and in terms of identifying that need, begin with the end in mind, measure twice and cut once. Design questions to get uniform responses. I'll give you some examples in a minute from community organizations and enterprise, etc. Tick box. So in other words, give them a menu of maybe 7 or 8 or 9 options, which one, and they tick all that apply, or whichever ones they feel are relevant or of interest to them. And the second one, obviously, is the ability to prioritize or rank in order of preference. In other words, which are the top 3, and there's ways of doing that using this software. Of course, all of these can be done at a meeting. You can bring farmers into a room, and you can sit down and you can do a couple of facilitated exercises, ask a number of questions and ask them to prioritize, and that's another way of doing it. But if time is of the essence and you're all busy with quite a heavy workload at the moment, I think that some of these other methods may be something that interests you. So it's very important that you have a means of prioritizing the topics, and that's even within the subheadings. So you have a number of objectives there. There are 9. Under those, there are specific things and topics that you could cover, which are relevant to the local area and relevant to the particular farmer group you have. You know your farmers much better than anybody else does, I suppose. In real terms, you probably could go away and write this up without consulting with anybody, but that's not what is permitted or what's required. There has to be some meaningful engagement, and there has to be documented proof that it basically took place as well. So in terms of once you have your results, once you have done this, and believe you me, if I was doing this, I'm not in agri advisory game anymore. I'd be using some of the online tools, and maybe for one group or 2 groups, bring those that are interested and available together. You could even have a Teams meeting, but a lot of farmers won't do that, from my experience. Or a Zoom meeting, and have a discussion that way as well. Or if you have existing opportunities or existing meetings that are taking place, go to them and piggyback onto them and use them as a mechanism to engage with farmers as well. And that's it. So in terms of presenting your findings, key things, just keep this very simple, very short, and straight to the point. Who you've consulted, geographic coverage, type of enterprise, farm size, etc. You don't have to collect all this information, but the more the better. How you consulted, when you consulted, how many people. So in other words, it was 40%, it was 50 or 60% of our total prospective participants. Gender balance, want to be just evidence that there were male and female. In terms of age profile, even just a statement, you don't have to ask them all their ages or categorize them. I suppose what the key findings were, and then what the priority need or needs were. And remember, this is up to 4 from a predetermined list. I think the key ask here and the key trick in this, from my understanding, is to present it in such a way that the 9 overarching objectives make sense when they're asked directly of members of the farming community. In terms of presenting your information, you can present it in graphs, charts, text, etc. I think for this exercise, that probably is overkill. And ultimately, you're analysing your data and you're providing, a summary of the answers to a small number, probably 3-4 questions, in a very simple format. As previous presenter outlined, there's loads of other resources you can go to, I suppose, justify prioritising a particular area, whether it's Border Midlands West at a county level, etc. Again, look, if that's readily available to you, good and well. If not, I think the consultation probably will suffice. I suppose then, in terms of your knowledge transfer actions and what you're proposing to do, they need to tally with the results of your needs assessment. I know that sounds a little bit like common sense, but believe you me, I do appraisals for government departments, and it's amazing how many times people do a needs analysis and then they go and write something completely different in terms of what they're going to do. So just ensure that it all tallies and it all tells the same story, and rank needs in order of priority. Okay. So just a couple of examples. I'm going to share just a different screen here if it works for me. 1 second. So screen share. Yeah, these are just a couple of these are just a couple. This here was just an example. These aren't farmers. These are needs assessment questionnaires we've done for studies, etc. And it just maybe a little bit of learning for some of the questions. You're not going to have anything near as complex as this or as many questions. But ultimately, in this case, it was a digital hub. It was actually Newbliss in County Monaghan, not that far away from where I am. This survey and other justification we provided levered 1.8 million of public funding. So you're not at that sort of level. But basically, just to show you in terms of questions, the way this here was done in SurveyMonkey, you can have little tick box answers and other. Try and avoid, and this is my own practical suggestion, trying to avoid just open-ended questions. What do you think? Because you're going to have to analyse it, and it's going to take too long, and it's going to give you a heap of additional work. Try and have, I suppose, the tick box trying to kind of questions in terms of, and then here's one here in terms of ranking. So this one here, question 11. This was in relation to justification, converting an old courthouse into a digital hub, and they wanted to see what were the main factors that were going to influence people to come and work there, such as access to high quality broadband, contribution to local economy, quality of life, etc. And obviously, the ones that come out on top, SurveyMonkey does the ranking and calculations for you. The broadband was the number one. This was done 2 years ago when none of us had broadband. Some of us still don't have it, but nobody had it at that stage. Other questions then as well, basically are I suppose tick box, and then from the analysis screen you can actually extract data from it as well. Not just simple yes and no answer. So that's just one example. I'll give you another one here now if I can open it now as well. So this one here was a different one. This was a community group actually over in West Cavan, not that far from the Fermanagh border. And this was in a village called Swanland Bar. Again, you can see the format and types of questions that are being asked. Simple questions. You're only going to have a very, very small number in your case. You're not going to be asking them what they ate for their breakfast and a heap of other questions. You're not going to have time, and you want a high participation rate. And you can see here the various different tick boxes in terms of categorizing what type, for example, what type of farm enterprise have they, what do you see? So what facilities and offerings do you feel are required in the Swanland Bar area to promote tourism? What type of events you'd like to see? So in your case, you've got your 9 objectives. I think you need to convert those into a form of text that farmers can relate to, and ask them which they feel they would be interested in, and then you need to rank them in terms of priorities. If you want to be a really good student, what you can do then is subdivide for those that have a particular interest in topic number one, for example, or an objective number one. You can then provide a list of topics that you've come up with under that you would like, that you potentially could cover, and then within that you can further identify need within an objective, what specific topics farmers in your area would like to would basically like to cover. Here's another question format, so you can ask people, do they strongly agree or disagree? And again, this provides I suppose greater degree of detail and analysis. I am conscious, you know, some farmers are very tech savvy, others are not, and you don't want to make this overly complicated, and you want to get numbers to actually complete these. Okay. Here's another type of question here as well, in terms of I suppose in terms of for different age groups, etc., etc. But again, I don't feel you need to go into that level of detail.